Don't tell me you invited him to the wedding," a guest whispered as the groom ran to embrace a homeless man entering the church. Many turned away, visibly uncomfortable. But minutes later 12 Marines appeared in formal dress uniforms, lined up in perfect formation, and saluted the groom in unison. Type "I'm outraged" if you believe kindness should never be judged. Arnold Sanchez started each workday at 4:30 a.m. Arriving at Sunrise Bakery in San Diego well before the morning rush. At 30, he had already spent 6 years as the head pastry chef, known throughout the neighborhood for his delicate croissants and melt-in-your-mouth cinnamon rolls. But among his co-workers, Arnold was known for something else, his daily ritual that began the moment he finished the morning's first batch of pastries. Each day without fail, Arnold would carefully wrap a fresh pastry and pour a cup of coffee into a to-go container. He would slip out the back door and place the items on a bench near the bus stop, along with a handwritten note, "Wishing you a peaceful day." The recipient was always the same, an elderly man with silver hair and a tattered coat who never begged, never approached customers, but sat quietly on the same bench each morning. In 6 years, Arnold had never asked his name, and he had never offered it. His co-workers often mocked him behind his back. "He's wasting good product," one would say. "One day he'll take advantage of his kindness," another would predict with certainty. 3 months ago, the bakery had come under new management. During Arnold's performance review, his supervisor had expressed concern. "Your personal charity work, it's admirable," he'd said carefully, "but some customers have mentioned feeling uncomfortable. Perhaps you could support a proper homeless shelter instead." Arnold had nodded politely but changed nothing. He simply adjusted his routine, arriving 15 minutes earlier, leaving the food before anyone else arrived. He thought no one had noticed until last week when a new employee spotted him returning from his morning mission. "He's been feeding that bum for 5 years now," the employee whispered to a customer, loud enough for Arnold to hear, "every single day." The customer shook her head with a mix of pity and judgment. "Poor thing, thinking he's making a difference." Arnold had pretended not to hear, continuing to roll dough with the same care he always showed. But the words stung not because he cared what others thought, but because they couldn't see what he saw, a human being, not a problem to be avoided. "You're too soft-hearted," his mother had told him when he announced his engagement to Maria, a firefighter who understood his morning ritual because she had her own ways of helping strangers, always picking up strays, always giving away what you've earned. But Arnold knew something others didn't, that giving wasn't about recognition. It was about seeing the invisible people that others walked past every day. Have you ever seen good people misunderstood? Type "so unfair." Arnold had never actually spoken with the elderly man. Their interaction was limited to brief nods and occasional eye contact. But one rainy morning in December, he noticed him shivering on his bench. Without hesitation, he placed his own worn wool scarf beside the usual breakfast. The next day, he found a note scrawled in shaky pencil on the back of his usual napkin. "Thank you for seeing me as a person." Arnold kept that note in his wallet, taking it out occasionally when the world seemed particularly cold or indifferent. As his wedding day approached, Arnold naturally ordered his cake from Sunrise Bakery, inviting all his colleagues to the ceremony. Maria had teased him gently about inviting the entire neighborhood but supported his inclusive nature, one of the many reasons he loved her. 2 days before the wedding, an unmarked, hand-delivered letter arrived at the reception venue. The envelope, addressed simply to the groom, Arnold Sanchez, contained a card with neatly penned well wishes and a single line that puzzled the wedding planner. "Tomorrow I will come not for cake, but to honor a debt." There was no signature, no return address. Arnold wondered if it might be from a distant relative or one of Maria's firefighter colleagues, but something about the handwriting stirred a faint recognition he couldn't quite place. On the morning of his wedding, Arnold was a bundle of nerves and excitement as he prepared in the church's groom's room. Through the window, he could see guests arriving, family members, friends, co-workers in their finest attire. Then, standing somewhat awkwardly at the church entrance, he spotted him, the elderly man from the bus stop, now wearing a threadbare but carefully pressed suit. His shoes were polished despite their worn condition. His silver hair was combed neatly, and for the first time, Arnold could see his face clearly, weathered by time and hardship, but dignified. Several guests had noticed him too. Arnold overheard their whispers through the partially open door. "Who invited the homeless man? Don't tell me you invited him to the wedding. Is he looking for handouts at a wedding now?" Arnold's heart sank at their words. Without thinking about the carefully planned processional, the photographer's schedule, or any other wedding protocol, He gathered his black tuxedo jacket in his hands and rushed from the groom's room. He crossed the church foyer in a flutter of formal wear, ignoring the gasps from guests and the frantic calls of his wedding planner. When he reached the elderly man, he enveloped him in a warm embrace, tears threatening to ruin his carefully groomed appearance. "I still remember your eyes, the first time in 2017, he whispered. The man smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. "I remember every single morning you treated me like a human being," he replied in a voice stronger and clearer than Arnold had imagined. As Arnold linked his arm through his to escort him inside, his wedding planner approached, confusion evident on her face. "Arnold, the ceremony is about to start. Who is this gentleman?" Before Arnold could answer, the distinct sound of vehicles pulling up sharply outside the church caught everyone's attention. The double doors at the church entrance swung open with military precision. If you've ever misjudged someone, type "I was wrong." The church fell silent as 12 United States Marines in full dress blues entered in perfect formation. Their shoes gleamed, their white gloves immaculate, their faces composed in solemn dignity. They moved with the synchronized precision that comes from years of discipline and shared purpose. Guests froze mid-conversation. Someone dropped a champagne glass, the shattering sound echoing in the sudden silence. The lead Marine, a captain with Duncan on his nameplate, stepped forward with practiced precision. He came to attention before Arnold and rendered a perfect military salute. "On behalf of Alpha Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines," he announced, his voice carrying throughout the church, "we are here to honor the man who silently sustained a hero for 6 years." Arnold stood stunned, his hand still holding the elderly man's arm. Confused murmurs rippled through the wedding guests. Captain Duncan turned slightly, gesturing toward the elderly man at Arnold's side. "This is Sergeant Victor Hale, a Marine who saved 9 lives during an ambush in Fallujah in 2004. After losing his entire family to a car accident in 2016, he chose to disappear from society, never once using his military benefits or revealing his identity." The revelation sent shock waves through the gathering. Guests who had been whispering just moments before now stared in disbelief. Another Marine stepped forward, presenting Arnold with a shadow box containing a medal and a faded photograph. The image showed a younger Victor Hale carrying a blood-covered Marine through what appeared to be a war-torn street, and in the background, unmistakably, was a younger version of Captain Duncan. "Sergeant Hale carried me 4 blocks under enemy fire after I took shrapnel to both legs," Duncan explained, his voice steady but emotional. He returned for 8 more Marines that day, despite being wounded himself. His actions earned him the Silver Star, which he never claimed. Duncan bowed his head slightly before continuing. "If not for him, I wouldn't be standing here today. And if not for you, Mr. Sanchez, he might not have survived to see this day." Arnold's composure was beyond saving now as tears flowed freely down his cheeks. "I never knew," he whispered, looking at Victor with new understanding. "That was the point," Victor replied gently. "I didn't want to be thanked for doing my duty. After losing my wife and daughter, I couldn't bear to be around people who saw me as a hero when I couldn't even save my own family." He paused, emotion briefly overcoming his composure. "But you never asked who I was. You never demanded my story. You just fed me, saw me, left notes that gave me a reason to wake up each morning." The Marines had arranged themselves in a formal line, creating an honor guard that extended from the church entrance to the altar. Captain Duncan addressed the gathered guests. "Mr. Sanchez never knew he was helping a decorated war hero. He simply helped a human being in need, day after day, year after year, without recognition or reward." His gaze swept across the room, lingering on those who had been whispering just minutes earlier. "In the Corps, we have a saying, never leave a Marine behind." Arnold Sanchez, who never served a day in uniform, understood this principle better than many who wear the uniform. One of the groomsmen, tears streaming down his face, stepped forward. "I work with Arnold at the bakery. He arrives early every day to bake extra pastries, paying for the ingredients himself, just to make sure he had fresh food. He never told anyone," added another co-worker, shame evident in his voice. "We teased him for it." A guest stood up, overcome with emotion. "We're witnessing not just a wedding, but a military honor ceremony." Victor turned to Arnold, his weathered hands taking his. "I came today to give you the only gift I have left, my presence, my truth, and my gratitude. I knew you were getting married because I overheard you mentioning it to a customer. I hope you don't mind that I contacted some old friends." Arnold smiled through his tears. This is the most beautiful wedding gift imaginable. Maria, the bride, who had been watching this unfold with amazement, finally approached, extending her hand to Victor. Sir, I would be honored if you would join our ceremony. Perhaps walk Arnold down the aisle? If you've ever received something enormous from a small action, type I owe a debt. Following their honeymoon, Arnold didn't return to the bakery. Instead, he and Maria used their wedding gift money to start a small program called The Quiet Table, a breakfast service for homeless veterans in their neighborhood. There were no photographers documenting their work, no press releases announcing their mission, just a simple wooden sign with carved letters: feeding one person feeds an entire life that might otherwise be forgotten. Victor Hale didn't appear at the quiet table after the wedding, but each month Arnold would receive a postcard from different locations around the country, each bearing the same message: every breakfast is a salute. Thank you, Arnold. Captain Duncan had explained that Victor was finally using his VA benefits to receive proper medical care and trauma counseling. The Marines had helped him secure housing and reconnect with the military community he had abandoned years ago. On the first anniversary of their wedding, Arnold and Maria arrived at the quiet table to find the 12 Marines waiting for them, this time in civilian clothes, each holding a single flower. We'll be taking shifts volunteering here, Captain Duncan announced. This honor isn't one we'll allow to be forgotten. What had begun as one man's daily act of kindness had grown into something much larger. Veterans from across San Diego now knew about the quiet table, a place where they could receive a meal without questions, judgment, or the need to explain their circumstances. Arnold kept Victor's original note framed above the serving counter. Thank you for seeing me as a person. Below it, he had added his own message: everyone who sits at this table has a story worth knowing. 6 months later, a local news crew discovered the quiet table and requested an interview. Arnold politely declined, suggesting they speak with the veterans instead. This isn't about me, he explained. It's about seeing the invisible people all around us. On particularly difficult mornings when supplies ran low or volunteers didn't show, Arnold would remember his wedding day, the moment 12 Marines stood at attention for a simple act of daily kindness. It was all the motivation he needed to continue. Maria understood completely. As a firefighter, she knew that heroism wasn't always about dramatic rescues or running into burning buildings. Sometimes it was about the quiet consistency of showing up day after day, offering kindness without expectation of recognition or reward. You know, she told Arnold one evening as they closed up the quiet table, when I married you, I got not just a husband, but 12 Marines and a growing family of veterans. Arnold smiled. The best kind of family, the kind you choose and the kind that chooses you back. Type I will live with kindness if you believe a small meal can save a great soul. Some people have lived as heroes only to die in silence if no one sees them as human beings. Some debts require no money to repay, just the daily dignity of being treated as a person. Arnold didn't need to know Victor Hale's identity. He simply saw aging eyes, a hungry stomach, and someone who deserved acknowledgement. Through that small action, a life was preserved and a unit of Marines was reminded that not everyone who deserves a salute wears a medal. Sometimes the person who guards your freedom is quietly eating breakfast under your bakery awning. The homeless individuals we pass on street corners might be former teachers who shaped young minds, nurses who once saved lives, or veterans who carried wounded comrades through gunfire. Their current circumstances don't erase who they were or who they still are beneath the layers of hardship. Live with kindness, not for recognition, but so that someday you might witness 12 people bowing their heads for something you never thought to celebrate. In a world obsessed with grand gestures and viral fame, remember that true heroism often lives in the smallest acts of consistent compassion, delivered without an audience. Because the greatest heroes often eat alone.